Morning, everyone. David Aragona here, taking a look at one of the graded stakes on the Travers undercard on Saturday at Saratoga. Actually, the race being run right before the Travers. Race 11 is the Grade 1 Sword Dancer, going 1.5 miles on the turf course for the older horses. A field of 7 signed on for this race, and we'll throw up this group of 7 runners. And the number 7 Stone Age is the one who figures to attract the most support. The runner-up in last year's Breeders' Cup Turf, now making his first start off a trainer switch to Chad Brown. He definitely has the strong company lines from last year that would make him pretty tough in this race. But you do have some others that have been knocking heads against each other in this division, like the old 9-year-old, the number 6 Channel Maker, coming off a victory in the Bowling Green. He's won this race before, looking to get back to the winner's circle in the Sword Dancer. Some others like Bolshoi Ballet, who's coming in from Ireland for trainer Aidan O'Brien. So a lot of things going on in this Sword Dancer. To get a sense of how this race might be run through the early stages, let's take a look at the Timeform US pace projector for this field. And the pace projectors are often difficult to assess in these marathon races because horses really are ridden to not go at their maximum speed in the early stages. So sometimes the pace figures can be a little bit misleading. But I do generally agree with this pace projector, as the number 6 Channel Maker is shown on a slight early lead over those 2 foreign shippers, the number 7 Stone Age and the number 3 Bolshoi Ballet. It should be noted that the pace figures for both of those horses are only based on their North American races, so a smaller sample size for them, but both of those horses have shown some tactical speed in their prior U.S. starts, so I think it could be expected that they will be somewhat forwardly ridden in this race. On the off chance that this pace does heat up, the one that would benefit the most is the number 1 Soldier Rising. He gets that LP flag on the pace projector, indicating that he has the highest Timeform US late pace rating in this field. And let's begin with that horse, the number 1 Soldier Rising, as we take this field in post position order. We're going to go 2 back in his past performances to check out the replay of his second place finish in the Grade 1 Manhattan. Certainly no disgrace losing to Up to the Mark, who unfortunately has gone to the sidelines since then, but a horse who was the ruler of this turf division through the first half of the year. There's sort of really impressive victory by that horse. And Soldier Rising game to get up for second here, just nosing out a classy Godolphin rival, Ottoman Fleet, on that day. That was going the 1.25 mile distance and was also a race where he got a very good trip and ride, saving ground much of the way, got a fast pace to close into. You see those red color-coded pace figures 2 back in his past performances in Timeform US. Different story last time in the Bowling Green, as that trip did not work out for him. The race was dominated towards the front end. He had too much ground to make up, and also he took a really hard bump coming around the far turn as Rebels Romance, who was the heavy favorite in that spot, clipped heels and lost his rider, and that riderless horse bumped right into Soldier Rising and really upset his momentum at that point in the race, a critical juncture, and no surprise that he was not able to make a rally after that. So you might want to give Soldier Rising a pass for his last race, but he still is a horse that hasn't visited the winner's circle in quite a while. 1.5 miles sometimes seems like it's a little bit outside of his scope, so he definitely is one that needs the trip to work out to be successful in this Sword Dancer. The number 2 is Verstappen. He's another horse who's coming out of that Bowling Green, and unlike Soldier Rising, he got a great trip in that spot, was right in behind that pace setter Channel Maker, who went wire to wire, and he was just saving ground the entire way, tipped out at the top of the stretch, and just couldn't really get to the eventual winner, stayed on decently for second. He's run well in all of his recent starts, was beaten by some of these, including Soldier Rising in the Man of War, going the 1 3/8 mile distance 3 back. So stretching out to the 1.5 miles, it's not supposed to be a problem for him. He did win going this distance in the Elkhorn a bit earlier in the year. Just feels like one that's going to have to take a slight step forward if he's going to come out on the winning end. The number 3 is Bolshoi Ballet, and he is one of those European shippers in this race, though he is actually just shipping over. He has not been based in this country so far this year, actually competed just about 4 weeks ago in the King George VI and Queen Elizabeth, a prestigious Grade 1 event at Ascot, and was not competitive that day with some of the best European runners in the division, like Hookham and Westover and King of Steel, but just seemed like a horse that was taking a shot in that race, serving as a bit of a pace setter. Prior to that, he had run fairly well in some lesser stakes races, was second in a stakes at Royal Ascot, and before that was a close third, just barely beaten in a Group 3 event, facing some nice horses. Actually finished ahead of the Breeders' Cup Turf winner from a couple of years ago, Yabir, who was fourth in that Al Rayyan Stakes back in May at Newbury. So Bolshoi Ballet's form is actually pretty decent coming in here, and he is a horse who has shown plenty of tactical speed in the past, was competing in the U.S. back in 2021 in a series of races, won the Grade 1 Belmont Derby on this circuit. So Bolshoi Ballet has some credentials, but he does have to get the mile-and-a-half distance, something that he has not been successful at in the past. The number 4 is Daunt, and he is yet another one of those horses that's coming out of the local prep for this, the Grade 2 Bowling Green. And he's one that I thought did not get an ideal trip in that race because he was breaking from the outside post position in a field of 9 and just never really had any opportunity to save ground. He was basically 3 wide around all 3 turns of that race. In the last 2 turns, he just had no cover, racing out in the clear, tried to make a bit of a move at the top of the stretch, but just kind of petered out in the late stages. But that's to be expected when a horse is going 3 wide around 3 turns compared to a horse that wins the race that's taking the shortest path around the racetrack, saving ground, as Channelmaker was. I thought that Daunt actually finished up pretty gamely to be 4th. We saw the 5th place finisher from that race, Tawny Port, come back to win the John's Call earlier this week at Saratoga. And Daunt has also been on a steady rise through his recent races, ran well in the Red Smith last year, while just a 3-year-old. He got a wide trip 2 back at Belmont when he was closing well, going the mile-and-a-quarter distance. And I like the gradual stretch out for this horse, who I think is cut out to appreciate this mile-and-a-half distance. He's going to be a big price in this race if you like him. The number 5 is Pioneering Spirit. Let's take a look at his last race when he was a winner of an optional claiming N2X allowance event at Saratoga. And this is a horse, another one, that has been on the rise through his recent starts. He broke his maiden in a $40,000 maiden claiming race back in May, but has reeled off 4 consecutive victories since then, including this victory that we're looking at, going a mile and 3/8. And the thing to really note about Pioneering Spirit is he has been improving, taking steps forward from a speed figure standpoint as the distance have gradually stretched out over his past 4 starts. Seems like a horse that has really appreciated the switch back to turf since getting claimed by Linda Rice back at the start of the year. And Linda Rice initially entered this horse in that John's Call on Wednesday, but elected to scratch him at the last minute. Saw this Sword Dancer was coming up a little light, so she's targeting this race instead. Can't blame them for taking a shot given the way this race came up, but it is a significant step up in class for a horse that has never raced in a stakes before. The number 6 is Channelmaker. Let's take a look at the Bowling Green and the stretch run of that race as he was able to get to his preferred position on the front end and just never looked back, leading this field from gate to wire. The race obviously got a little bit easier for him when the heavy favorite, last year's Breeders' Cup Turf winner Rebels Romance, did drop his rider when he clipped heels coming around the far turn. But take nothing away from Channelmaker. When he gets this trip, able to set his own fractions, he is really game through the late stages. And you could see he was never giving this one up as he pulls away from his rivals through the final 1/8 of a mile of that Bowling Green. Like I said, he's won the Sword Dancer before. He's a horse that generally gets comfortable on the front end, and it really depends on how much speed we get from those 2 European horses, Bolshoi Ballet and Stone Age, to see if they're going to press him or not. But Manny Franco rides this horse well. He's probably going to hustle him out of the gate to try to get to that position up front in this spot. The only difference is you got 15-1 last time. You're probably going to get a much shorter price, a fraction of that, if you support him in this race. So he's a little bit of a last time was the time kind of runner. And then finally, the number 7 is Stone Age, the horse that I did peg as the morning line favorite. Let's take a look at his race back in November of last year in the Breeders' Cup Turf, where he was second to Rebels Romance. And actually briefly looks like he might win this race coming off the far turn as he tips out to make his move, but just could not stay with the fast finishing Rebels Romance through the late stages. He got the mile-and-a-half distance this day, which is something that has been a bit of a question for him in the past. He's a horse that generally has been thought of as more of a mile-and-a-quarter specialist, but he did handle the distance on this occasion. His 2 subsequent efforts have been a little disappointing. He was supposed to do much better in the Hong Kong Vase last year, bet down to favoritism in that race, but was just kind of dull. And then he competed in a race in Qatar after that and was just never a factor, actually fading to last after getting a wide trip. So some questions about his form since that Breeders' Cup turf. And I can't say that I was ever the biggest fan of this horse going into that Breeders' Cup race, as well as he did run in that championship event at the end of last year. Now he's coming off a layoff in the Chad Brown barn, and we'll show a trainer stat for Chad Brown that I looked up in DRF Formulator. This is over the past 5 years. With foreign shippers in Grade 1 stakes races, Chad Brown is 0 for 7. And it's a small sample size, but I think the sample size is notable because Chad Brown just doesn't do this that much. He doesn't run these horses in Grade 1s off long layups when they first come into his barn. So it's a little bit atypical for him. Chad Brown has said in some of his pre-race quotes that this horse is only about 80% fit for this race. So I'm a little bit reticent to take a short price on a runner like this, as classy as he seems. Let's throw out my picks for this Sword Dancer, and I'm going to swing for the fences in this one because I just don't trust a lot of the horses that are likely to be the shorter prices in the wagering. And the number 4 Daunt is a horse that I've had a little bit of a thing for a while now, but just feels like he's finally really headed in the right direction. Got that wide trip in the Bowling Green last time. I've always thought that he's cut out for these marathon distances, and he's finally drawn a better post position here, and he's just not catching the toughest Sword Dancer field that we've ever seen. And I think this race is ripe for an upset, and Daunt, an improving horse like him, could be the one that could take that opportunity. So the number 4 Daunt for me in the Grade 1 Sword Dancer on Saturday at Saratoga. Good luck if you're playing the races this weekend.